First, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of PADRAP. Most of you have probably seen this at least once, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. And then I'm going to present some good examples of how veterinarians have used PADRAP, both at the farm level and the area level as well. So what is PADRAP? It's basically, the mission of PADRAP is that it's collaborative, that it's epidemiology based, and it's supposed to help producers and veterinarians. It consists of a set of risk assessment questionnaires that have a database behind them, and then a set of reports that can be generated after assessments are done. And currently, we rely primarily on benchmarking diseases. So everybody seems to like to get a score, and so we do a lot of benchmarking with the reports. Currently, we have 2 assessments in the data are available. One for the breeding herd and one for the growing pig herd, and both of them are for herd. The program itself is designed to accommodate more diseases, more stages of production, and even different species. So we're making progress, but I would say very, very slow progress on expanding that list of surveys. It's web-based. Since '97, we got converted from a spreadsheet-based program where it was initially built to the current online program that we have now. And it's global, really. We just did a online training session the other day. We had Jane Carpenter from Canada, and we had a veterinarian from South Africa on. So we were reaching out all over. We've done a lot of face-to-face meetings, both in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. So it's a collaborative effort. ASB, of course, owns it, as Bob mentioned. It was donated by BI in 2006 is when it was accepted. They actually made the offer about a year earlier. And then the ASB did some due diligence before they decided to take it on, wanted to make sure it was something that had value for the membership, and then that it was going to be supported. And National Pork Board has provided some of the initial funding, continues to provide funding every year. USDA provides some initial funding. Iowa State University then, myself, Jamie, all the students provide the program coordination and work with some of the research that we're doing with PADRAP. And then Boehringer has continued to support the program all along. It's really a misnomer to say in-kind because they would support it financially as well, but the in-kind part is primarily Dell and Dell Folsom back in the room there, and then other veterinarians as well. But Dale still helps us with most of the training sessions today and invests a lot of his own time in the program. And when I say own, I mean own because it's usually Saturday or Sunday that he's sending out me emails and stuff. But and then PRRS has supported some of the funding or has funded some of the projects that we're working on. And then our current programmer is Subaru LLC. They're based in Kansas City. We're actually moving the program, though, up to Iowa State here now. Some of the reports that can be generated today, and I say today, I'll explain why I emphasize that in a minute, but this is probably one of the most commonly used ones. It's called a risk quadrant. We call it the risk quadrant report. Basically, it's kind of a 10,000-foot view. All the blue dots represent all of the assessments, the latest assessment for all of the breeding herd sites or all the sites that are in the database. And then the gray lines represent the median. So this is a median external risk score, median internal risk score. And I'll take just a second to explain external and internal in case that's not obvious. External risks deal with introduction of a virus from the outside. So the term that I prefer now, rather than external, is bio-exclusion. All right, I'll credit Dr. Butch Baker with coming up with this terminology. For internal risk, it's dealing with a virus that's already there. So again, the term I prefer now is biomanagement. Okay, the one area we don't even contemplate in PADRAP, nor do we oftentimes in practice, is biocontainment. Okay, so Dr. Baker sort of outlined these 3 areas of biosecurity: bio-exclusion, biomanagement, and biocontainment. Okay, there was a fair bit of discussion yesterday about biocontainment. Dale, when he talked, I don't think he used the term biocontainment, but that's what he was talking about. Cooperating with our neighbors, collaborating with neighbors to try to slow those bullets coming at us. The next report is what I call the risk profile summary, and this is kind of the 5,000 level view. And so now you can kind of drill down into some of the risk categories of risk factors. And so at the highest level, you have the overall risk here, and overall risk, and then that's broken down into internal risks, and then finally external risks down here. And everything is reported as a percentile ranking, and you can tell by the length of the bar kind of where they stand. Now, it's very much like reading the standardized test scores that maybe your kids or yourself bring home, except that on those you like that to be a big number and you like the bar to be big. When it comes to risk, then you like it to be small. So that's the only difference. But everything is sort of summarized on a percentile ranking basis, so you can see how you rank relative to others in the database. All right, and then this is finally down in the tree level, individual risk factor report, kind of a line-by-line listing of all of the questions along with the response that was given. And then there's this color coding system over here that kind of tells you the relative risk that was associated with that response, and this is where you can go and find out, what is behind each one of these, what risk score is behind each one of these responses. So this is kind of this is the transparency report too. You can go and see exactly how everything is scored from this report. You can tell. So, and it's summarized or organized, I should say, in exactly the same way that the survey itself is organized. So it's all by category of risk. All right, so that, and then finally the risk Pareto chart is also a tree-level chart form. It just basically ranks all of the risk factors or questions according to the most risky to the least. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. And there's a color scheme here. The red means bio-exclusion or external risk. The blue is always associated with bio-management or internal risk. All right, so now I'll present some good examples of how veterinarians have used PADRAP, and first a disclaimer. This is my role in all this. I am presenting other people's work here now for the most part. At the farm level, Dr. Aaron Johnson has done probably more work in this area than anybody else that I know of anyway. This is just one example. I've got two from her, but this was where she did kind of a what-if analysis to motivate some change at the farm level. So she was saying she did the risk assessment for this. It was actually a group of farms in a production system, and for a subset of those, she said, "What if we?" After they did them, she identified the things that maybe could be changed, and she said, "What if we change those things?" And my point is not to dwell on what she wanted to change here, but the point is that once they made those changes, then she created a hypothetical survey with the changes in it, and then summarized that in this chart here. And unfortunately didn't have the gray lines to represent the medians, but that little green dot there, which is probably hard to see, the green dot is here represents it's the intersection between the median external and internal risk scores. So in this case, and the red dot is for is a summary of all of the is a summary of all the sites that she wanted to consider. There we go. And so before the current, where she assessed them originally, they were up here, and so they were well above the median bio-exclusion or external risk score, and pretty close to the median when it came to the internal risk score of bio-management. So she made the changes with the hypothetical assessments, and then it lowered the external risk score down to about the median. So she's pretty close to the median there. And then at a little bit more detailed level than what that meant was it didn't really change any of the internal risk scores. It did change the overall, but most of that or all of that really was due to the external risk scores. And in particular, you can see that live animals was reduced significantly, as was operational, so trucking, things like that. So those were the two areas she focused on in that what-if analysis, and then this is how she summarized it. And I thought that was a pretty good summary. These were actually PowerPoints that she had prepared for that client or customer. This is another example of one that Dr. Johnson had prepared, and she put these farms that she had assessed. There was actually 8 of them here, and I changed the names to protect the innocent, but we'll call it Happy Pig Farms, and these are the 8 sow farms, and so she just summarized those side by side. Now, I'll make an apology here, right? Today, we don't have the capability to do that in PADRAP, and we should. I mean, really, this should be something that should be fairly straightforward to do, to summarize multiple farms side by side. And so there's a lot of things, frankly, that we can't do today in terms of analytics and summaries that we'd like to be able to do, but we can't do them today or don't have the ability to do them today. Part of the reason we changed the programming is to be able to facilitate that, and I think that will pick up space. We were fairly frustrated with the progress that we were making before, and that was one of the things that caused us to rethink our approach. So a lot of the reports I'm showing you today we can't do in PADRAP directly, and so there's a manual component. We use Excel a lot. One of the things that's really handy is that individual risk factor report I showed you, which had all the colors just like this, that's where this came from. You can copy and paste that thing directly in Excel, and everything comes in beautiful. The only thing you have to change is the column list. You can adjust the column list, and then that's how Dr. Johnson did that. So when I first saw it, I thought, oh God, that probably was a lot of work, but it actually wasn't. She just copied and pasted datum in there, and then copy and pasted from there. So it took her about an hour, I think she said. So anyway, but we shouldn't need to. We shouldn't make people do that manually, and we recognize that. But at any rate, a third example, again at the farm level, is basically a use of PADRAP that I would say is fairly common. Probably the most common use today then is to provide information. I think I keep sticking my finger in front of that, that's why it didn't show up. Provide information to make a decision about whether or not to eliminate a project. So again, all right, we've said it 100 times, we know how to eliminate the virus from breeding herd with a fairly high level of success, just can't keep it out, right? So obviously when you're making an assessment of whether you're going to go forward with an elimination project, one of the key questions you have to answer is how long do you think you can keep it negative so you can recover the investment you're making to get it negative, right? And so what Shams did, and what I worked with him on, is to develop a more sort of systematic approach to doing that. It's not terribly complicated, but it's systematic, and there is some rigor to it. And he presented that last year, or earlier this year in March at ASB as a student project, or in the student seminar, and was one of the $2,500 scholarship winners with it. So he was happy with that. So were we. This is basically the approach, though. So you're using a combination of risk assessment along with some production data that feeds into this financial model to make a decision about whether or not to eliminate PRRS or not. And so that's basically it. So he developed, he did the risk assessments. He developed this net present value model in a spreadsheet, and then brought in the production data for this farm. And so he did actually this was a case study. So he developed the SAFER program and then did a case study on that. And this was a farm in central Iowa. And this was kind of the timeline. I won't go through a lot of detail, but bottom line was they were negative for a long time. Then they had this break that they actually picked up on diagnostics and saw a little bit of clinical signs. Decided to do LVI to get uniform immunity in the herd, and then there was a really dramatic short but dramatic abortion storm, and then they got over that, and then were trying to decide whether they wanted to proceed with the elimination. So that's where Shamus got involved, developed a SAFER program, and then did the risk assessment for them, and ultimately they decided to go ahead and eliminate the virus. So John and I should have coordinated, I guess. I showed this a number of times, but this is the fourth example I give at the farm level to monitor risk over time. And again, John did a great job of this. There's actually somebody doing this on a quarterly basis now. I'm not sure I'd recommend that for everybody. They've actually done risk assessments on a quarterly basis for about 25, 30 farms now, and are looking at it that way. But John did these on an annual basis, and he showed you a couple slides from that. So I won't go into a lot more detail other than I'll just show you the 4 years that he did them. So you can, by animation back to 2005, you can see that it just trends down over that. And then Dr. Polson, Dale, did this, put this summary together with the data that I think John provided, or that was provided by the company, but showed that over time, as the risk scores went down, the breaks, number of outbreaks went down as well. So there's at least some association there, we can say. Whether we can take credit for that, cause and effect wasn't necessarily determined there, but again, a good example of how that was used. And the other aspect of that one that was somewhat unique is that was actually used then to justify the expenditures that were made to improve the biosecurity. So it was kind of a way to prove to the board, I guess, in some way that it was a wise investment, which is difficult to do. And then what they did is went through using the individual risk factor reports, and again they dumped these into Excel to do this, to make these summaries. Again, some manual process involved there. And they identified then some low-hanging fruit. Okay, and so the idea here is to try to evaluate current biosecurity protocols and motivate change at the area level. And so they did that by identifying this low-hanging fruit, and this, of course, is the internal risks here. And then they did the same thing for the external risks. So again, identifying low-hanging fruit. These are the ones that are circled. So what they were basically looking at here is factors that are modifiable and maybe could be done. The low-hanging fruit were the things that could be done relatively easy, relatively inexpensively, and maybe with a high level of confidence that they would actually get done correctly. So, all right. So with that, I'll stop. Just acknowledge the individuals that did the work that I presented, and as well as ASB, National Pork Board, and then the first captain, of course, BI, for both funding and in-kind support. So.